Hello and welcome to Meet the HRH Team Series. My name is Araminta Johnson and I work with Heather Hayes and Associates Inc. Meet the Team is a series of interviews where we meet and get to know all of the core people within the Heather Hayes and Associates team. Today it gives me great pleasure to welcome Andrew Sidoli, Clinical Supervisor at Heather R. Hayes and Associates. Andrew, hi.
Good morning. Did you say cool people?
Core people, all of the core people, but yeah, you are one of the cool people at HRH.
Thank you very much.
Can you tell me a little bit about your role at HRH?
Yeah, certainly. I'm the clinical supervisor, which means that I add supervision, support, encouragement to all the clinicians who are working within the team. That usually means either supporting family members who are in crisis, because we get called as family members are dealing with either adolescents or young adults, sometimes it's a spouse, sometimes it's a daughter or a son, or it's even a parent. The families are in crisis, they're usually calling for an intervention, for a family workshop, or some psychoeducation, a direction on how best to deal with their loved one and their substance use disorder and their mental health crisis. So I add support to the clinical team by brainstorming, helping them to reflect, thinking out of the box. We have plenty of really challenging and complex mental health situations. So it's really about sort of staying on tips of our toes and constantly engaging and meeting clients where they're at.
How long have you worked in this industry then?
Oh gosh, I've been in this industry on and off since the late 80s. I originally went to the United States to study substance abuse counseling and I ended up working in the field. I have been in a variety of different clinical roles, from behavioral health tech in a psych ward and psych unit to detoxes. I've been a primary therapist, focal therapist. I've been a group therapist, family therapist. I've been clinical supervisor, clinical director, chief clinical officer, both in short-term, long-term, residential, outpatient. And the work that I really enjoy the most is to work with the whole family unit, because I believe that healing happens within the whole family when an individual is seeking help for substance use disorder or mental health.
And that's sort of the sort of motivation behind Heather R. Hayes and Associates, isn't it? Is that, as you say, it's the family unit that gets healed, not just the individual. And I suppose also all the experience you've had in a variety of different modalities and different treatment, whether it's treatment centers or facilities or psych wards, probably help inform the work you do as a clinical supervisor for HRH, I imagine.
It does, because we, as I said, we get very complex calls, very, very difficult patients. So the experience is very helpful. And to some extent, all families in crisis sort of resemble each other. And so it's really about sort of bringing that experience to bear, being able to be sort of a calming influence on the proceedings, helping to educate, helping to motivate. Sometimes family members are stuck. And doing all that work with the family member whilst the patient is in treatment, so that we're looking to improve outcomes.
Absolutely. And what would you say the values are that drive you?
My values are basically steeped in excellence. So there's a sort of almost unachievable goal that one is always sort of striving for when one is striving for excellence, which involves some thinking out of the box. I think creativity and innovation do come into play when you're thinking of excellence. You know, sort of linkages to perhaps other disciplines and other ways of thinking that can help to just find the key to going above and beyond with that one particular individual. I think it's driven by an innate inquisitiveness, curiosity about the human condition, about that particular individual, whatever the age group is, about that individual story, their narrative, and of course the whole sort of family narrative that goes with it. So I think that the one thing that sort of drew me through 20 plus years that I've been doing this has always been an innate curiosity about the human condition.
I can completely understand why, that makes you so brilliant at your job, really, is because it is this innate curiosity of the psyche, the human condition, and each person has is an individual and will make up, this whole dynamic within a family system, which is fascinating to study, and to find, you're also problem solving, I suppose.
That's right. I was just going to say that it's a little bit like a giant puzzle. So there's a little bit of detective work that goes into it because everybody sort of responds differently, even to the same information. So how to find the way in to kind of connect with an individual that is, incredibly shut down, or with family members who are really sort of stuck, is constantly a sort of process of, it's always an evolving process of finding the right questions, finding the right sort of keys to open these areas of pain and crisis, which then sort of develop into sort of trust and hope. Because that's really what we are doing when we work with families. We take a very difficult and dark moment in an individual or in a family's life, and we help them to transform into hope, and we galvanize them into action.
So who inspired you to pursue the career you have today, or in fact, who just inspires you in general?
Well, I have to say that it was really my mom and my dad, because both my parents had a midlife crisis and decided to turn into psychoanalysis. They got their own Jungian psychoanalysis, and then they both, my mother in particular, my dad didn't become a fully trained analyst. But so it was part of the family kind of culture and value system. Everybody got into therapy and so on and so forth. Who would I admire the most as a therapist, other than Carl Jung, of course? I would say sort of Irvin Yalom on this side of the pond as just a shining example of a lifelong commitment and a passion for excellence. Professionally, I would say have been two of the sort of guiding stars.
Have you written any books or any writing at all about this in this field?
I have not. I've done a few presentations and that kind of thing. It would be nice to be able to stop and reflect. Again, I found that sort of Yalom's books have been particularly sort of gratifying because he writes about the subject matter, but in a novel way, and using fiction, which is a fun way to sort of do it. Perhaps one day.
Well, that's what I was thinking, just chatting to you and you saying, Irvin Yalom is someone who you admire a lot, and then how you look at the job as a sort of problem solving, and you're fascinated with the human condition. I would imagine that in the future there is a book inside you somewhere. That's what I feel anyway. Nice. And what is the best advice you could give to someone who is struggling with either their mental health or addiction?
First of all, it's not to give up. And then secondly, I think that it's very, very easy in this sort of day and age to sort of fixate on a diagnosis and then sort of, do one's own sort of research on Google and the internet. And I think it's just very easy to frighten ourselves into a state of paralysis when we think about mental health. I think that it's just a question of the degree of functioning that an individual has. There are plenty of individuals who have very sort of rather important mental health diagnoses and yet are able to function at very, very high levels. And I think that has to do with a sort of functional assessment of where one is at. So I think that we tend to sort of put a lot of stigma on mental health diagnoses and substance use disorders, and individuals are actually able to function quite well in spite of their diagnoses. So I think community support, sort of finding meaning and purpose are really essential parts of an individual's healing journey. If possible, sort of connecting to family, but some people that is not possible, but it's always possible to recreate a sense of family with others. Right? I think if there's anything that we can sort of possibly learn from the last year is that in spite of disconnection and sort of not being able to sort of physically be present with others, I think sort of certainly it's been sort of obvious to me that the need for connection, the need to, whether it's through sort of Zoom or FaceTime or a phone call, that we need others in order to function well. And I think that very often in our society, we just get so busy with all the stimuli that we have and technology, events and stuff like that, and we forget to really have meaningful connections. And I think this sort of is a time that's given us an opportunity to ask, how are you? No, really, how are you really, right? To have a deeper and more profound conversation with our friends and neighbors and members of our community.
I absolutely agree. And I think it's been given a lot of people time to really reevaluate what is important to them, whether they've had time off because of, work or lockdown or whatever, and think, actually, do you know what, I've really enjoyed spending more time with my immediate family, or not, whatever the case may be, but actually have a think, do I really want to spend X amount of hours working working as all hours God sends? And if you do, then great. That's that's just that time to evaluate is so important, I think. And yes, a lot of people have come out saying actually connection is imperative, and it's what I really I've got a lot out of just spending time with my family and kids. That brings me quite well to the next question. What do you enjoy when you're not working?
My favorite winter pastime, and starting to kind of move into that season, is skiing. And I've actually lived near a mountain for the last 15 years now. So definitely skiing in the winter. If I can get away to a coastal area, kite surfing, something I got recently into, so much fun. But I really enjoyed kind of camping and going outdoors. And we have a trailer. I go out with my son a lot, sort of exploring the beautiful sort of mountains of the western region here in the United States. So anything that has to do with the outdoors, basically.
Well, that's another thing that allows you to, we were talking about connection with other people, but I think for me personally, being outdoors, being in nature, is a place that allows me to really connect with myself and with what perhaps is the whole. I don't know whether it's a better way to put it other than that, the everything that is around us. So again, we go back to again and again in this industry, it's back to connection, isn't it? With oneself, with each other. I think it's so important. Last question, everyone's favorite question is, what is your secret talent that no one knows about?
My secret talent that nobody knows about is being able to whip up a rather good pasta dish in less than 25 minutes for up to 8-10 people without breaking into a sweat.
Amazing. I need to come over. That's a reason to come to the States then, to try that. It better be good as well.
It's good. You can ask the rest of the head of the team.
Okay, I will do. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for chatting to me today. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you. And if anyone has any questions for Andrew, they can contact him at andrew@heatherhayes.com. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And thank you very much, Minta. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.